What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by country rapper Bubba Sparxxx. Basically, this project is called Deliverance, and it came out in the late summer of 2003. So basically, Bubba Sparxxx came on the scene in late 2001, collaborating with Timbaland and pitches like that. Basically, the Dark Days and Bright Nights album was pretty good pitch. He had a hit single off there. I think it was called Ugly or something like that. It was pretty good pitch to kind of get that, just because it kind of revolutionized white hip hop and doing country hip hop type music. Kind of like what Eminem did for white rappers in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Bubba Sparxxx kind of did that for like rural white. Bubba Sparxxx kind of did that for rural white rappers. I'd have to say, kind of spawned folks like Haystack. Everlast was kind of another country rapper. Kid Rock were some of these type folks that did it, but Bubba Sparxxx definitely was one that kind of amalgamated like hip hop albums from country artists, especially white country artists, as far as that particular pitch kind of went. It's just kind of a good concept. Seeing country hip hop was just kind of something that was a relatively novel idea back in the early 2000s, as far as that pitch can happen. I mean, there were things like new metal and rap rock and some of those type pitches in like the mid late 90s, folks like Kid Rock and Everlast, some of those type folks, and other folks like Beastie Boys. But in terms of like country hip hop, Bubba Sparxxx was definitely one of the first, and it's pretty awesome kind of get this. It's a pretty quality album here, I'd say. It's a relatively brief project. It's 13 songs, not counting the two interludes pitches like that, but it does have some pretty good appeal. What I'd say about these particular singers, more if you're used to Bubba Sparxxx, moreover, with songs like Miss New Booty and Heated Up, some of those type ones off of his 2006 album, The Charm. That one was kind of more urbanized and pitches like that, a little bit more commercial. Had folks like Ying Yang Twins and Big Boy, some of those type folks on there, just some of those type pitches, organized noise. Now, this project at least has the Outcast, this particular album at least has the Outcast producer group Organized Noise on here, but for the most part, this is a pretty relatively full-blown rural album. The singles are rural. The productions that are not the singles are rural. This is just a really outback and countryside type album that's just definitely southern pride and pitches like that, just in a more just relatively out in the outback type feel about it. Doesn't really have anything that's modernized or city slicking pitches like that. I'd say it's a good concept. It's definitely like a country hip hop album classic. I'd say definitely one of the ones. This might be like close. I may not full blown say that this is like the Marshall Mathers LP of country hip hop, but I would definitely say it's pretty close. Definitely a big deal. This is a seminal type project out of country hip hop. Definitely a big deal enough to be able to say that. Just really had some appeal about it. Definitely for like just that sort of aspect of just a more laid back type of appeal. Folks like Haystack, Kid Rock, more folks like that, Uncle Cracker, some of those type folks just really had that appeal in sort. It's too bad there's not more guests on here. I have to say Bubba Sparxxx basically picks up the slack entirely by himself, with the exception of Timbaland helping out a bunch, which he has some pretty good beats on here. It's interesting kind of get Timbaland doing some of these completely southern fried type ones in like a more relatively outback type sense. Just a good concept and a good niche for Timbaland as far as that pitch kind of goes. It's too bad that Timbaland wasn't on the 2006 album The Charm that much, because I definitely would have liked to have seen what he could have done with that. Basically, Bubba Sparxx's biggest album. This is definitely one. This is an album that's really good. It's just kind of the concept that I feel like it's just kind of a niche album in certain sense. It's just the concept that I feel like the biggest song off this particular album, which has 40 million plays on Spotify on here, is Deliverance, the title track, which is a good song, but it just doesn't have like the appeal of like typical kind of rap songs when you think of something like Way You Move by Big Boy, or like 21 Questions by 50 Cent, or Without Me by Eminem, some of those type ones. I mean, it works within a magical niche. It works within a hit niche that it kind of has within country hip hop pitches like that. In terms of like crossover type appeal, something that's going to be all over the radio. It's just kind of it's not, I don't want to say it's alternative in that sense, but it just kind of has this particular niche was just not as fully realized around this time. And Bubba Sparxxx kind of abandoned it somewhat in 2006. This is kind of the concept. This was something that was built upon with his first couple albums of Dark Days, Bright Nights, and then this particular album, but it just didn't get manifested more. It just was kind of something that he helped initialize, but didn't continue to put out classics. I mean, he did later on, after like The Charm, and then like the hit album from 2008, 2009, The New South, and some of those type ones. He did come back to country hip hop with like Pain Management, which I'm getting ready to review, but that's just kind of the concept. This is, once again, a pretty seminal album. It's not going to get like a classic rave score, but it is going to get pretty damn close. Definitely above average, and definitely pretty rather stellar project to kind of fuck with, and especially in southern hip hop and just white countryside hip hop to kind of get in particular. I don't want to say white in terms of like playing the race card, but just in terms of like country hip hop, it's definitely a pretty notable, just a pretty good face card to kind of play here. That's just a real winner in most senses. That's just kind of the thing. But yeah, there's 3 singles on here. Like I said, these are good songs. I recommend all 3 of these. It's just kind of the concept that they're more stretching to like the niche that they kind of take apart. It's not like these are ones that were like songs like when you think of like Shake Your Tail Feather or Hot in Here by Nelly, some of those type ones that were just #1 singles on like the radio. They're not bad songs, but they just didn't get their commercial breakthrough, which is kind of the thing. But Jimmy Mathis is the first single. This is definitely a nice one. It's like a country rap hopper of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a standard kind of summery day boiler, I'd have to say, in like a rural sense. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a good house party noise of a song. So this is definitely one just for some outback type fare, just in the countryside, just letting things crank, pitches like that, just drinking hell of beers, pitches like that, just some good turn up just within the outback type appeal. Playing darts, shooting off fireworks, just some of those type pitches out in the countryside, just appreciating like the rural life. I would have to say it's a real nice one. I mean, it's easy enough to tell this is a pretty countryside type song, I'd have to say, but it just works pretty well. It's just it's a shindig type song. I would definitely feel like this hootenanny type music, I'd have to say in particular, but this works as like a riveting type one, but it is rural. So it's not like that's a problem. It's this kind of thing. It's just, you'll notice that. Deliverance is the second single. This is another nice one. This is a real hit song. This is the most popular song according to Spotify. This is the most popular song according to Spotify. This is a real hit song here. Timbaland helps out with the hook. Pretty good pitch to this. This is just a summer stretcher. I would feel like it's like a great low-key Bubba single. Great low-key Bubba Sparxxx single. I'd have to say it's like an outback kind of late day summer stretcher. I would definitely feel like, and this is just some good unwind and kind of a traverse slog of a song, I'd have to say. So it's definitely one. Just cruising the countryside, pitches like that, just appreciating the outback and some of those type fares. Just work was a long day, pitches like that. Just the standard commute, just great for like 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock p.m. Some of those type pitches is like the sun setting. It's an excellent type one to just appreciate the countryside and just some pitches like that. This is a great blue collar song. It's really just had the Deliverance, the title track just has such a sage and just overall calm and just composed type atmosphere in like a countryside type sense. It's just not the typical single that you get. Most rap singles back in the early 2000s were kind of more in your face and just more riveting, but this one just has a lot of sageness about it and just overall kind of composure that's just different from like the appeal behind it. It's just really the aspect, but it works pretty well. It's just a real patient type song, has some good appeal. Timbaland does pretty great with the hook on here. Back in the Mud is the third single. This is produced by Organized Noise, which is a pretty good pitch. I like some of the beats on here. It's just good enough concept. But basically, it's like a riveting kind of country bound turn up of a song, and I'd say in particular, it's another Traverse type one to kind of get, but this one's a little bit more riveting. This one has a little bit more of a pulse towards it. I'd have to say it's like a late day kind of excitement for like a good night that's getting ready to happen. I would have to say in particular, it's a nice one. If you know you're getting ready to buy some beers for the night, really have some good shindigs. This is kind of like a primer to that sort of thing. This is just like an errand. The song is also like a good errands finishing up type song to kind of get here. So if you do have some leftover tasks to get done, cash a check, some pitches like that, get some cell phone bills paid, some of those type of things, some of those type pitches, pick up the last of the groceries. I say it's a good concept, kind of get some of that going just within the concept. It's a real frenetic type song. It's a real one that should get you throwing in like another rural sense, but it works pretty well. So there's 15 songs on this particular album, and out of those 15, minus the two, there's 15 songs in this particular album, and minus the 2 interludes, the intro, and then the Warrant interlude that narrows it down to 13. And out of those 13 songs, I wound up recommending 9.5. That's pretty good concept. It's pretty good. Definitely pretty good hit ratio, I'd have to say. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 9.5 songs. So that'd be Jimmy Mathis, Deliverance, Back in the Mud, Coming Round, She Tried, Nowhere, Hootenanny, Take a Load Off, and Warrant. And then the almost song is My Tone. So basically, to talk about My Tone real quickly, this is a pretty nice one. But this one just, My Tone is a decent one. This is, like I said, this is an almost song, but this is like a jivey kind of country hop of a bounce. My Tone is like a jivey kind of country hop bounce of a song, I'd have to say. This song has a somewhat grating beat, but when you're tipsy or thrilled, some pitches like that, it just works better, I'd have to say. And this is a pretty live song, I'd have to suppose. It's definitely one. There's some turn-up songs on this particular album where Bubba Sparxxx does at least attempt to take the helm in terms of being like a party starter and pitches like that. Just get some real shindigs going. Just really pop bottles, pitches like that. Really has some good times really has some thrilling and kind of exciting times as far as that particular pitch kind of goes along with it. I just would have to say there's some ones like Hootenanny, Take a Load Off, My Tone, Jimmy Mathis, some of those type ones. So this is kind of like a bottle popping type project. Definitely some good aspects to kind of get here just within the aspect of kind of having. I'm glad that there's some ones like this particularly on here. I'm glad that Bubba Sparxxx, at least despite being out in the outback and kind of more rural bound, not so much like a city slicker or more kind of nightclub bounce and some of those type of things. The fact that he still manages to have some good times and just get some bottles popping, some of those type things. This is the fact I would probably recommend My Tone that much more if the beat was not quite as great. I mean, it's just the loop of that particular production. It's kind of a nice one, but it's just kind of the offhanded, kind of more country type tone of it makes it a little bit more of kind of one that just takes a little bit more of a learning curve. It's not a horrid one, but it's just kind of one that, depending upon how you listen to it, might be one that gets tiresome quicker than others. Still a relatively nice one. Nowhere is a pretty nice one. Definitely appreciate this song. It's another stretching type one. There are some stretches on here. It's kind of in between like some of these pop off type songs, and there's definitely some ones like Deliverance, the title track, which just has some good kind of summer stretching, this Traverse type appeal. I would say that Nowhere is kind of like a stretching, kind of Traverse ruminating of a song. I'd have to say it's just some outback thoughts. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a good work shift malaise. I would definitely feel like, and this is a pretty radio ready sparkle that this song particularly kind of has. It's a real R&B tinge type one. This really feels like it could be like a radio airplay type one to kind of get here just for like some countryside type bound type stuff for country rap, some of those type pitches. I mean, I feel like the breakout appeal of this particular project, probably to some folks out there, Bubba Sparxxx is probably like their Eminem or something like that, or their Dr. Dre, some of those type pitches. I'd have to say it's just kind of the good concept of this. A lot of these just had the radio type appeal. I'm just trying to get that in particular. Coming Around is a pretty nice one. It's like a lazy day kind of country marinating of a song. I'd have to say it's like a basic kind of pastime song, I would feel like, and this is just everyday and typical feel the song particularly kind of has, but it's pretty affable. So I just would have to say about this one. This is one of the most plain type ones, not necessarily plain in a bad way, but just kind of a lackadaisical, not really much going on. This is not one that's leading up to like a house party or something like that, or not necessarily worship pitches like that. It's a lazy kind of Sunday, some of those type pitches, just summer appreciation. If you live out in the outback, just pitches like that, just appreciating stuff in the backyard. It's kind of localized stuff like that. Spending time with your pets, some of those type things. She Tried is a pretty nice one. I do like the appeal of this one. It's probably one of my more favorite songs on here. It's like a simmering kind of late day summer dredge of a song I had to say in particular. It's like a good cousin of Deliverance song I would definitely have to feel like, and this is just some outback activity commute I'd have to say. She Tried is another one that kind of has some radio ready appeal. I'd have to say in particular, it's just a real nice one that kind of has. This is definitely one that kind of has like that aspect of just being like a kind of another attempt at being commercialized and pitches like that. I definitely appreciate a lot of these. Like I said, this is basically. I mean, I want to say this album possibly went platinum, maybe it went gold, something like that. I mean, Bubba Sparxxx was not really like a multi-platinum type art. Bubba Sparxxx is not really like a multi-platinum type artist. Not like he was foul and just didn't have good hits. It's just kind of concept. For the most part, he would only get like one or possibly two hits per album. This is definitely one of his breakout albums in terms of that aspect. I feel like the charm was a little bit more commercial and pitches like that, but this definitely had more critic appeal and pitches like that. Some folks really felt like this might have been Bubba Sparxxx's best album, especially out of the 2000s when he was more in the spotlight. It was this kind of concept. There were some songs on here that tried to break even with the radio. Jimmy Mathis, She Tried, Nowhere, Deliverance, some of those type ones. It really had some good appeal. Hootenanny is a pretty nice one. I mean, obviously with the song title, this would imply that this is going to be a more kind of lively and party starting type one. It's like an offhanded kind of country hick hop boiler, I'd have to say. This one reminds me of Bubba's 2001 days. I definitely would have to suppose, and this is just like a social outing in like a rural sense. It's definitely a pretty good concept. Yeah, Hootenanny is just another good Kickstarter to kind of get things going as far as that pitch kind of happens. Definitely like I would feel like Bubba Sparxxx is like the country rural side. I would definitely feel like Bubba Sparxxx is like the country Eminem as far as that pitch kind of happens with this. So these are just some nice ones. Really, I feel like just outback and pitches like that, especially in a more, and definitely out in 2024, you would think that this is relatively lackadaisical, but for early 2000s type fare, it's definitely a country project that you can't go wrong with this. Some of the initial type ones that kind of did that. I do feel like this is pretty much out of the basics of like country rap. This just seems like a more seminal type one for back in those days. It's kind of something if like country trap maybe is not quite as suiting when you think of some of those type ones they're kind of doing that nowadays. I mean, Bubba Sparxxx has kind of embraced country trap nowadays. He keeps some of that country type appeal, but he does have like some albums like in 2022, 2024, which I would almost surmise are country trap as far as the pitching goes. But this is a nice one, pretty nice Kickstarter, kind of get things going. Hootenanny, just nice appeal. Another one like that is Take a Load Off. Definitely appreciate this one. It's like a town hopping kind of out and about jive of a song. I'd say in particular is like a good two-step tune. I would definitely feel like nice little bop to kind of dance to a bit. Just some basic concepts for that. And it's like a fraternizing kind of task done kind of Kickstarter, I would feel like. So a lot of these on here, Bubba Sparxxx does manage to get things started pretty quickly as far as that pitching goes. I mean, the aspect behind it, I do feel like there's some more gnarl type stuff out of the 2000s, but for the aspect of just kind of more and like a kind of hit rural sense where things feel more familiar just within that particular pitch. This is definitely some great stuff that you can't go wrong with that. I suppose it's just a good concept. Some of these are pretty crazy. I mean, the concept about a lot of this, Bubba Sparxxx is wild type dude, despite the fact that he kind of has a quiet as kept type tone as far as he particularly kind of goes. He may not be like mystical like or someone like that or old dirty bastard like, but it's not even like that's a problem just because the delivery of how he does things. He is a pretty good lyricist. He has competency pitches like that. I just suppose this is a good aspect to kind of have. Makes hit songs. That's a good concept. And then another nice one on here would be Warrant. This is kind of a surprise hit song, I'd say. It's kind of the concept. This is like a task getting done type song. I would feel like this is like an outback kind of traverse, lazy stretching. Warrant is like an outback kind of traverse, lazy stretching, tasks at hand kind of song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like some basic kind of day commute, I would feel like. And this is like a song to get some Subway and kind of smoke once things are kind of done. So this is definitely one. I mean, despite the fact that they're talking about having a warrant out for you as far as that particular pitch kind of happens, as far as I would kind of go, I look after this just being something that you have, so things you got to take care of today, pay some bills and pitches like that. And this is just kind of a task at hand type song, I'd say. Vet appointments, some pitches like that. Got to wake up early in the morning. Some of those type fares. It's kind of not necessarily like a full blown strenuous type day, but maybe just kind of like somewhat of an irritating type day within a minor sense. It's kind of the concept that it's just kind of a it's kind of like a chore, somewhat of a day, I'd have to suppose, but it's just some basic comment. I would definitely recommend just the concept of, getting this done, being done by 3 o'clock p.m., some pitches like that, getting some Subway, smoking one afterwards, some pitches like that. I mean, it's definitely a good song before the jump. Warren is definitely a good song before the jump, but it works as a pretty good song after the jump as well. But what I mean by the jump is just after the tasks are done. It's the concept of the jump of getting done with that, and then it's kind of having the kickback of just relaxing for the rest of the day. Some of those type of feels that I'd say, just getting some Subway, smoking a few swishers, pitches like that. I suppose it's a good concept, but the song just kind of has some good appeal about it. So it's just kind of one that's not necessarily like a house party type song or like a makeshift type song, but just kind of one where you just have a busy day or something like that. So that's the basic concept about this particular album. I just look after it. Basically, out of 13 songs, once again, I recommend 9.5 out here. So talk about some of these songs I didn't recommend on here. Basically, like I feel like Overcome was just one I didn't really agree with as much. It was just kind of like a triumphant type song and just trying to have some bravado about it. As far as a bucking adversity type song, I just didn't vibe with as much. I mean, I feel like the appeal of like the lyrics were good enough within a relative sense, but it just kind of felt more modernized, and I just didn't like the production on that one. This was kind of, I mean, I feel like some of these are just kind of offhanded within the sense. I mean, when the production and like the lyricism kind of take a toll, this is kind of a concept. It's just not as much of an Apple one to kind of listen to. That one just didn't have like the correct eloquence that it needed. New South is kind of like a clumsy kind of country rock type tune that just didn't work that well. It's just kind of a clumsy type one that just didn't really have much execution, I'd have to say, or just overall appeal. Like it or not, it was just a poor organized noise type beat. This was kind of one that just was a little bit brassy. I mean, sometimes Outkast does this. This kind of feels like an Outkast leftover, but just didn't really work that well. It's kind of a disappointment that Sleepy Brown didn't have a better appeal about this particular song. I feel like when he was on a song with Big Boy on the song Way You Move, he just nailed it a lot better. He just nailed Way You Move a lot better, but he just didn't really have the appeal. He also nailed the Ludacris song, Blueberry Yum Yum, just a lot better, but that one's just one that didn't work that well. And then there's like one other song I can't think of. I guess that's virtually it. So there's really only 3.5 songs I didn't recommend on here because my tone is one. So that would be basically about 10 songs out of 13. So, but yeah, me recommending 9.5 songs out of 13 on here. Me basically recommending 9.5 songs out of 13 on here. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8.25 out of 10. Pretty damn good as far as that pitch can goes. Definitely revolutionary, helped pave the way. Some pitches like that was a big deal around that particular time. Did a lot for country hip hop, especially for white rural country hip hop as far as that particular kind of went. Some good concepts. Bubba has a pretty affable character. He has some great singles on here, some great productions from Timbaland, and for the most part, organized noise, I'd have to say. Probably could use a few more guests on here that were more kind of big name as far as that pitch kind of went. It's too bad that more folks didn't fuck with them around this particular time. But I feel like this is just kind of an album that just is kind of critically acclaimed, that kind of built the buzz for the Charm and pitches like that. I'd have to say definitely the Charm was like his breakout album the most. I'd have to say it got him his most appeal. But I kind of look after it. This is kind of the one, like when folks think of like when folks will say that Jay-Z's earlier days are better or Eminem's earlier days are better, but or just artists in particular that had better albums before they became commercial and pitches like that, when they had like some kind of more underground albums that kicked ass apart from like their breakthrough and like their biggest album, I'd say this is kind of a good concept about that. But I actually do feel like the Charm is probably better than Deliverance. I mean, there may be some people that could debate that as far as that particular kind of goes, but I look after it in terms of like the overall composition. There is back-to-back good songs on here, but it just doesn't have the commercial breakout and the overall gloss and the appeal and just the overall kind of urbanized and more nightclub bounce. I mean, there's no real nightclub songs on here. There's definitely some good rural aspects as far as house parties and just backyard type parties, pitches like that, some moonshine campfire type stuff, I'd have to say, but it just doesn't really have the appeal of like something like Miss New Booty or Heated Up, some of those type ones that just have the appeal of just like urbanized type stuff. It's this kind of concept you just have to, I would just recommend getting both these sounds. Both the Charm and Deliverance are some pretty nice ones. This one's just a little bit more rugged and rough around the edges, but it does have some of that. And this is pretty much like, once again, I feel like this is damn near close to like a country hip hop kind of classic. Did a lot for like the early 2000s, helped pave the way. So it gets an 8.25. The social score I'm going to give as a result, I'll probably give the social score like a 7.75 out of 10 because I feel like the concept is definitely pretty appealing. There's plenty of good Kickstarters on here, some good workshop type appeal, stuff like that. It's just kind of the concept. It's just a little bit more underground. Doesn't have that breakthrough song apart from Deliverance, which is a pretty laid back type song. It's not really like a Friday night type song or a Saturday night type song or a Thursday night type song, I'd have to say. This is kind of the concept you just would have to get the appeal behind it. It's just if you're more just kind of laid back, just kind of mellow, just sip a couple brews, text some chicas, some pitches like that. I'd say it's a decent enough concept for some countryside gaze and pitches like that, campfire type music and outback type fare. But it's just kind of the concept. It's a relative to like it's a sort that it kind of goes with. This kind of niche type music where you have to relatively invest in it to really fuck with it. It's just kind of the concept. It's just not like I don't want to say not modernized, but it just doesn't have like the full blown kind of casual appeal. So 7.75 I would look after. In terms of the future, like Bubba Sparxxx supposedly is putting out an album this month in July of 2024. I'd say he's working on something. I want to say it's going to be called like the Impolite Gentleman. It was going to be not Impolite Gentleman, but the plural of that Impolite Gentleman. He collaborated with some cat. But originally that was going to be a Bubba Sparxxx album that was supposed to come out in 2008. So he's doing it now, which is pretty dope. Should be a good concept to kind of get that. But I look after there's plenty more Bubba Sparxxx to get to. I'm definitely going to get to some albums like Pain Management, some of those type ones. There's plenty more Bubba Sparxxx I'd have to say. But this is a relatively kind of paved the way type album, trailblazing pitches like that. Definitely recommendable within a country hip hop type sense. And it's pretty much an arguable kind of rural classic, I'd have to say.